Welcome to Epilogue Podcast, the show where we discuss some stuff that happened on a different show ages ago which nobody really cares about anymore.
Hi, I'm Portponky.
And I'm LeBloc.
Today we're discussing Farscape Season 2, Episode 17, The Ugly Truth. The crew are interrogated about an incident and give conflicting stories. This is a kind of classic storyline that you see in a lot of shows.
Where one story is retold or shown from different perspectives?
Yeah.
Is that what? Okay.
The Rashomon styles sort of plot. How did you like Farscape's take on it?
I liked it a lot.
That's not too surprising, because it was a good episode.
They do a good job of varying each story, and it really reveals the worldview of the storyteller. The changes they make really clue you into how that person thinks and how they think of certain characters. It's really interesting.
It shows who's a good liar and who is not.
Zan is really bad.
She's terrible. I wouldn't say who's his funniest, but her one I did find very, very sort of ridiculous. The amount of almost like purple prose she just threw in there.
I really like how everyone got along. That was really funny.
Everyone responds really well to appeals to reason in her version.
Also, she takes center stage. That was the most interesting part about hers for me. This idea that Zan wants to be front and center, or maybe she has this desire to, but then she's always sidelined in the actual show. And in her version, I noticed she knew what were they, Placavians?
Placavians, yes.
She knew what Placavians are, but then in other stories, she didn't. So she's this informed person, and she steps forward, and she's by the console. It was a revealing storyline. Or I'm just reading way too much into it.
It's a mix, because we don't know if it's Zan having a poor memory and placing herself more prominently in a situation than she really was, or if she's just doing a horrible job of lying to cover for Stark because she thinks he did it.
That first thing you said is a really good point, and I'm glad you mentioned it. We think of ourselves as the star of our own movie, so why wouldn't she think of herself that way? It's only odd to me because I'm watching it, but to her that story probably sounded perfect. Except for the lying bits.
In Dargo's version, it's more obvious when they're all sort of standing in formation behind him.
I really like Dargo's take on John.
He's just a mumbling fool that agrees with everything.
Yeah, doesn't move anything forward. He's just piggybacking on the ideas of others.
It's kind of harsh. John's his friend.
That's how you flatter a friend as a Luxon. Imply that they are weak and passive.
It's not wrong, though. He says pretty much that John doesn't make much sense. Well, they said it more in Season 1. He hasn't been digging into him so much.
This vision of John matches what we've heard Dargo say before.
Yeah, it all makes sense now. That's how he sees John.
If that's how he sees John, then all those lines were not harsh.
Did you notice that in John's version, everyone was a Plockavoid?
No.
So John mistakenly called them Plockavoids in everyone's telling of the story.
Oh.
But when John tells it, everyone is calling them Plockavoids.
That reminds me when Zan says, "Who are the Placavians?" I think that line jumps around. But anyway, that line comes up, and I really like it because the universe is vast, and when someone just throws out an alien species, not everyone should know, oh, okay, yeah, Placavians. I like the idea that someone on the cruise, I don't know who that is. Why would I know that?
They're quite diverse, though, so it makes sense to ask. It's good that Stark's like, oh yeah, I know those guys. No good.
And then earlier in the episode, a ship, I think a type of ship is identified, and then Rigel asks, is that good or bad? So he doesn't know. He can't know everything.
But these things are normal. I mean, this is what it should be like in other shows.
Yes, but it sticks out here because they just smooth over that in other shows where we don't want to deal with the reality that not everyone knows everything. Let's move on.
I don't think it's a highlight of Farscape, then. I think it's just setting a standard that other shows don't meet.
Well, it feels like a response to other shows. I think other shows avoid it because they see it as filler or unneeded. But then if you do that all the time, forever, it becomes this weird thing. And having it here in Farscape identifies it. Hey, we see that. We know it's strange. And here's our little reminder. It wouldn't be notable without other shows dropping the ball on this.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate it. I watch a lot of sci-fi, and I find this stuff refreshing. Stark, R.I.P.
Well, for now, they give themselves an out, then float this idea, hey, maybe I can bring my body back to life or whatever.
They mentioned Maldus as an example.
That's the one thing I don't like about this episode.
Mentions Maldus.
No. The idea that Stark could survive, it just cheapens that death. And now I'm thinking he's going to reappear again in a clumsy way. Hey guys, I'm back, whatever. And when Zan is all sad about losing him, I just think, well, he's probably coming back. They set that up.
They set it up before he went through with it, at least. So that's one thing. So I'm not complaining about this a bunch of times, but when a character dies and they're like, oh, everyone is sad, and then they're fine by the end of the episode, I always find that cheap and obvious as well, because they try and make it not that sad, because it obviously, if they're trying to make it their actual real death, then they would want to make it very sad. So in this case, Stark brings up the fact perhaps he can survive it before it happens, so it doesn't happen to him, and then afterwards like, oh, but maybe he can do it and it's not sad. Or is it sad? So I didn't find it emotionally cheap.
I didn't care when he quote unquote died because it didn't feel like a real death. I can't see them bringing up the possibility of surviving that without doing it.
You're predicting that he will return then?
Yeah. That, I feel like that's my safest bet ever. That would be so weird to have all that talk about. Well, I could see them doing some sort of botched return where he tries to come back and then it doesn't work out somehow.
Paul Goddard is in a bunch of things. It maybe ties into this, but he, for example, he was in the Matrix.
He was?
Yeah. Who do you think's standing next to Agent Smith for the whole of the Matrix?
Agent Todd?
Brown, but yeah. He's been in a bunch of movies. He's a sort of, supporting background actor kind of guy.
He has a good forgettable face.
He has a forgettable face?
Well, one that blends in. It's not going to stick out and distract you.
Hey, he's not got a George Clooney face or something.
Yeah, imagine Clooney in the background. That's not going to work.
So because he has a bunch of movies usually on the go, I don't think he could be in Farscape full time. So they just penned him down as a guest star.
So they killed him off in case he got too famous.
And left an out in case his fame fell and they could get him back.
Oh, that's sad.
Maybe. In any case, Stark died for nothing. Oh, well, he didn't die for nothing. What I should say is that he was not guilty.
Oh, okay. You confused me for a second.
Oh, he was a bit guilty, I guess.
The intention was there.
Yeah, and he caused John to turn off the console, which allowed Talon to shoot them. So I guess it was partially his fault. The death penalty is therefore warranted.
That goodbye scene was weird and made me laugh because he's stepping over their conscious bodies, but they can't move, but they're aware. It's weird because he's giving the speech and they can't react.
It is weird now that I think about it.
I'm pretty sure it's not supposed to be funny, but I was laughing because that's so odd. Not an ideal
Why are
goodbye.
you laughing at that?
Because he's stepping over them and they can't do anything, and he's talking about how it's goodbye.
Yeah, that's the circumstances.
Yeah, he couldn't do that. Was what he was left with, but it's strange.
Strange. I don't know about humorous. I didn't laugh at it. I'm not judging you.
Yeah, you are,
Well,
but
a
that's
bit,
okay.
But
Imagine,
I think you have a strange sense of humor.
imagine Christmas dinner, and then you're leaving, but everyone's on the ground, and they're looking at you, and they know you're talking, and you're stepping over them and saying goodbye, and then you're dispersed.
That sounds like some bizarre fever dream.
Sounds like a dream sequence in a Lynch film.
Yeah. So, in that context, sure, that would be quite strange and almost humorous. I hope Dargo feels terrible.
Nah.
He's awful.
I bet he feels justified. He's got to find Jotham.
Thanks to Stark. And again, thanks to Stark, because they would have all have been executed if it wasn't for Stark.
Maybe the third time Stark saves him, he'll get it.
Well, he did kind of get it at the end. He seemed somewhat regretful.
He only regretted not blaming him sooner.
Blamed him immediately.
I did like how Stark was this loud, frantic coward in Dargo's story. It just was fun to see Stark in a different mood.
I really like Stark as a character. He's weird and kind of troubled, but also kind of cool.
He has a soothing presence, just like his weird half-face blob.
That went all dim at the end.
Oh, yeah.
There was a B plot with Chiana and Rigel and Pilot flying around in circles.
I totally forgot.
I mean, they were literally flying in circles. I understand there was a reason for Pilot to, or I should say Moya to, I guess, be out of the equation. I just thought this one was a bit over the top.
Over the top stupid?
Yeah, they're just flying around looking for Talon in that a spiral pattern or something. It seemed unnecessary.
I would chalk it up to Moya being hysterical for having lost Talon when being so close.
Well, sure. I mean, it makes sense. It's just... It all amounts to nothing, and the whole time it's on screen, which is only a couple minutes, you're just thinking, okay, the entire point of this is so that Moya isn't there.
Yeah, it's 100% filler.
It's a nice idea for a prison.
I like the design a lot.
A hubcap. What if it wasn't very far down? There was just a load of really soft, sort of spongy material, so you couldn't hear anything that fell off?
That would be smart until people, if one person knew, then it screws it up.
Yeah, but it's still like a locked door, so
Yeah, but then they'll have fun jumping around on the spongy material. You can't have people having fun in prison.
they weren't really in prison, they were just being held.
You're not allowed to have fun in holding rooms either.
The Plockovoids are very mean. Their ship was weird, it had water floating around on the bottom, and their gooey faces were leaking into
They're
it.
very bad at plumbing.
The water was not intentional.
Yeah, that's why they have leaky faces and leaky ships. They're just really bad at plumbing. Biological and non-biological.
Are you talking about how their faces were falling apart?
Yeah. I kept waiting for that to have a payoff. There were so many shots of the face goop hitting the water. I think it was just there to be gross and to emphasize that they're different. But I was fine that it didn't have a payoff. But it was strange.
They're just goopy guys.
Yeah, couple of goops. Gooping it up. Alright, that's starting to sound like a racial slur.
Well, we don't know if that's what their race is like. Those two that we saw just could have a horrible skin disorder.
That's a good point. I hope that's the case. I hope we see more Placovoids and then they look nothing like that.
That would raise some weird questions.
That's why they're on this ship by themselves. They've been exiled because they're too gross.
Okay, then they're still a terrible race.
Oh, yeah. I don't deny that.
Well, they're selling weapons of mass destruction, so they can't be great. Their interrogation chair looked like a kind of pregnancy seat.
I
Like a
thought that
gynecologist
immediately.
chair. I think it was like a gyno chair, OBGYN.
That wouldn't surprise me. And it really stuck out to me because the first person interviewed is Erin, a female. And when you see a female in stirrups, I think of the birthing process.
Yeah, it's such a strange way to frame the whole interrogation.
It's a bit distracting.
I don't know if there's any point to that, or if they just did it for sort of style over substance.
That's how I took it. It looks alien. It's not a regular chair that you see.
Yeah, I can't think of any reason why you would interrogate someone for a crime whilst they're in that kind of chair.
Because they're going to birth the truth.
We don't even know if Plockovoids have birthed that way.
Yep, right through their goop hole.
Okay. They projected other people's faces onto John's face.
I like that effect. I know it's simple and probably stupid, but I like seeing the faces on his face.
It's surprising the things they can do that are so simple, but still look good. Or by good, I mean like stylish and kind of fitting in with the sort of feel of the episode. Because that's just literally a projector. They probably have a whole bunch of them about to light the sets and stuff.
I was trying to place why I liked it so much. I think because you almost never see that, and so it felt alien, but then sort of familiar, which is how the whole episode is, how it's an interrogation, but there are all these things that are weird about it. There's water, they're sitting in a birthing chair.
Maybe it's because their lies were reflecting on John's lies. Except John didn't lie.
As far as we know.
His story is consistent with what we saw at the start and what they discussed at the end.
He could be a really good liar.
Erin is a really good liar.
She learned from John.
She probably learned from military training.
Oh yeah, that. Oh, we haven't mentioned that Stark and Zan are an item. Or were before dispersal.
What do you mean?
How they were into each other?
They were into each other in the locket as well. Were they?
I can't remember
I can't
now.
remember.
You're probably right. I'm not invested in that relationship, so I wouldn't be surprised if that slipped from my mind.
They're both the kind of spiritual kind, and by spiritual I mean Zan has prayer powers, and Stark's face is a gateway to the nether realm.
Tomato, tomato.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing.
I want Zan to start wearing that mask.
That's what Rigel did on the royal graveyard. He dug up the mask and then he was wearing it to sleep. Maybe Zan should do that if she's having trouble sleeping.
Or when she meditates.
If she's at the shooting range and she needs to cover an eye.
When she has an eye exam.
It's really a very useful mask.
She could go fencing with it.
She could dress up like Stark on Halloween.
She's set for Halloween. You can't get any more authentic.
Yeah, then you can go trick-or-treating and grieve at the same time.
It's very efficient.
It was really sad when she was cradling the mask. I thought that was... I mean, say what you want about Stark's death and how it's maybe not much of a death. John and Aaron talking about Zan's reaction, I think, was the saddest part.
That was more sad than seeing Zan.
Do you have a quote from this episode?
You don't believe me, Crichton? Only because I know you. That was between Crace and John.
We never really talked about Crace being in this episode.
He's in it.
You have an anti-Crace opinion.
I like him here.
He's growing on you. One day you'll admit he's the number one beardy guy on the show.
No, because John had a beard at one point.
That beard was fake.
Also, Dargo has a beard.
He has a mustache.
He basically has a beard.
Yeah, it's like mutton chops. Okay. Well, you'll agree that Crace is one of the top 10 beardy guys on the show.
I'll give you that.
Maybe one day you'll refer to him as number one beard boy.
No.
The reason I'm talking about his beard so much is because it really looks like it's drawn on with marker pen.
I could see that. Oh, now I have this great story in my head of Crace feeling impotent because he can't actually grow a beard, and then he's using a Sharpie all the time to draw it on.
Because he's a commander, no one questions it.
They all laugh about it behind his back.
I think Crace was telling the truth, though. To go back to the quote, it did seem like he wanted to disarm Talon. I mean, Talon does seem like a huge liability.
It does feel like they're slowly working toward the redemption of Crace, where he seems like he's making good choices, or you can choose to look at it a different way, but he probably actually is making good choices.
He's choosing things for himself, and he spends a lot of time alone on the ship, so he doesn't have anyone to trick or take advantage of.
He's trying to trick himself for old time's sake.
Yes. Hence why he's still got the beard.
What? So he's trying to trick himself into thinking he can grow a beard?
Well, he wouldn't need to draw the beard on if he was all alone. It's not drawn on. He's the number one beard boy. Shall we move on to the next episode? Yes. Hint, the answer is in the question.
Shall.
Okay, we shall. I'll take that. Alright, let's do it.
Doing it.